Today is Wednesday, April the 8th of 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. Yesterday, I talked about predictability, and today I want to show you what predictability sits on, right? So I'm going to pull the model because actually that if we have a visual cue, it will be much easier for us to understand where we're going. So that's the full model. I gray out the areas that are not important for us today because today we're going to talk about systems, the controls and resilience where all the rest of the model sits, which is the innovation, transformation, the future, the predictability, also what makes our company so great, and also how the scale is going to perform, right? So we're looking about performances, governance, risk and compliance, and assets. Now, if you say why this and how this works, is pretty much I'm developing through the week each one of these four sections of the model just to make sure that you see how an operating system sitting in your company works. No, it's not just having to run to the next fire. Is everything happen at the same time every day, every single hour. So that's why this operating system works, because actually everything that if you hear a noise somewhere, you already have the blueprint where that noise might be and where to go and fix that before it becomes a real problem. So now that we have the visual cue in front of us, let me say this in plain terms, if you may. This is a part where the boards, executive teams, and founders stop asking, are we growing? And start asking this other question: can this business take the stain or the strain, right? The pressure, the daily routine, the grinder, right? Because sometimes it's not about the invoicing, the collection, or the things that the contracts, the partnerships, etc. What really hurts businesses is this daily routine, and well, it's part of the things that hurt businesses. So knowing something that actually can hurt the business badly, let's address it so it doesn't hurt anymore. Companies do not fail or do not fall apart at once. That's the problem, right? Because when the things are falling apart, when you see the full disaster already, when the house collapse, many clues were given in time, and if you don't address it timely and properly and with the right mechanisms to repair those things, at one point the things fall apart. So usually leaks start first, usually in cash flow, in invoicing, in collections, etc. But sometimes are not that. That could be the obvious one because everybody's looking to the balance sheet, everybody's looking to the profit and loss, etc., etc. But sometimes are things actually have recurring systemic issues like missed approvals here and there, or a weak handover here and there, and a cyber gap nobody owned, a control that existed in paper, but nobody was the owner or nobody was accountable for that, right? So you have it in paper, say, yeah, we're good, but then when something happened, who is responsible for this, right? So, and then one day, obviously, the board or the executive team or yourself as a founder, uh, you receive this call as a big surprise. Oh, look what happened. So the reality is not a surprise. Well, it is a surprise because actually nobody expects something like that happens. Because the drift, when you're drifting in this process, and this sometimes take days, weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years. This is where I come as a board advisor, right? Because actually I have to identify this drift and say, what's going on here? Guys, this is a purpose, this is a mission, this is a vision, this is where the company should be going, but you're going in the wrong direction, put it that way. But it's not because nobody is doing something wrong, it's because the drift is something that actually really happens. So what I build is a rotating international advisory board around the company's milestone. So the business gets the right controls, the risks are called, the cyber operating, and the operations, the governance, compliance, and the risk, and all the right at the time that are happening without carrying the wrong fixes cost, or for a long time things actually should be fixed or addressed right now, right? So You have this operating system that you see in the screen, and we start to identify where the things are drifting from the where you want to go or where the company is going, and where is the new direction, and how to address all these parts to make sure that it goes to that place. Now, let's take a look at three problems with this. I'm going to use the UK frameworks, financial authorities, statistics, etc. Why I'm doing that? Because I think it's very clear. You can download all this information online very easily, and then you can adapt this to your own jurisdiction, your own country, your own company, because at the end, these are business principles, right? So if you want to scale, if you want to get a better valuation of your company, if you want to protect the valuation of your company, all these are business principles that are very, very clear in the UK. And I love that because actually you can download these templates. They have templates and they have pretty much everything that you can start to adapt to your company and your country, your geography, your jurisdictions, and you say, well, now I don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's the key, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already there. So with that, it's a very good template to start to see where you need to adjust things. But let me show you three problems just to give you an idea. The first one is a governance bar has moved, right? So now governments or institutions are looking for boards to make a declaration on the effectiveness or their material of their material controls, right? So you as an executive team, as a board member, or as a founder, also you say, what are the controls? How? But it's not about the controls anymore. It's how effective are those controls, right? The second problem is the scope is wider than many companies thought or first assumed. And this is coming from the Financial Reporting Council guidance that pulls together board effectiveness, as we mentioned, audit committees, and risk guidance. And also, PwC notes that the annual declaration covers all material controls, not only finance ones, right? So you have now indicators that actually are talking about material controls and effectiveness of those controls, right? So, and the third problem, when I say material controls, I mean also operational compliance, reporting. So it's not just the declaration or the annual reporting, it's how effective is done across the whole organization. And the third problem, and this is something that people say, that really doesn't affect me, but listen to this. The outside threats is not slowing down, and particularly cybersecurity. Today, we are going into a bigger and wider technological society, if you may. Look at AI. They are talking about AI as part of the daily routines of many places and companies. And there are different conversations, different things actually, but the main point with AI, and I'm going to give you some examples, but not an example, but I'm going to just give you an idea. We mentioned this, we're going to talk about this today with Matteo Turi in our live streaming. AI amplifies the problem. So if you don't have very, very well structured or the architecture of your company is not very well put together, you have to be careful because actually AI is going to amplify what is in there. It's not going to fix it automatically for you or for your organization. It's only a big microphone with a massive PA system that is going to amplify what is that you have there. So if you have a company that is we lack controls or the controls are not correct, etc., this is going to compound problems. It's not going to fix them, even if you think they are going faster or cheaper. So you have to be careful. So the things in the terms of external threats, we also mentioned the National Cybersecurity Center that say that incident management teams handled a record number of nationally significant incidents during the latest annual review, and this is for cybersecurity. And you may say, what have cybersecurity have to do with us? Well, have a lot to do with you personally, as part of the organization and part of the wider society in business and in social. And why? And look what happened in Spain. If you're not aware, last quarter, I think the third or the second last largest organization, electricity company, was attacked. You know what was the impact? That actually, and this is personal now. My phone gets more calls, my emails get more spam, and my um, family too, because IBANs were stolen. IBAN is a code for a bank for making the payment. Passwords, details of the accounts, etc., etc., phone numbers, email addresses. So you say, well, that cyber, why it should be affecting me? It is affecting everybody. You don't probably we are not fully aware how much it's affecting us, how much our information is exchanged in areas that I don't know if they are legal or not, but my information is going everywhere, even as a consumer. So you have to look into not only protect yourself, also to protect your organization and protect all the people that are working with you in those cases. So that is a pressure. So what does sensible boards, executive teams, and founders do now? So in other words, just imagine this: like if you test your fire alarm, um, waiting for you can test your fire alarm when you start to smell smoke. You have to test it way before that, and probably have a routine of testing that fire alarm continuously. Because if you start to test a fire alarm when you smell smoke, you're probably already in trouble already, because you don't know if that fire alarm is doing the job or not. So you have to do this routine test every single time. So as an advisory board, what I would propose to consider is the following. It's three things, really. Number one is define what material is in your organization. So which failures will hurt valuation, trust, operations, reporting, or compliance. And notice I put valuation first because it's a reason. Even if you are a founder, or you're an executive team, or particularly the non-executive directors in boards, valuation is the first thing that you have to protect, right? The valuation of your company. Your shareholders are looking for the value in the return of the value of their investment, right? When you're going for investment outside for institutions or investors, etc., the first and the most interesting thing that people are going to see is how much your company, what is the valuation of your company. And people are not always fully aware that valuation is so important. And when they go into capital raising and sometimes they get a denial or a rejection, they're not fully aware that valuation perhaps was what the first thing that they had to put in front of everybody and say, not as a bragging, but say, our company is well valued. And actually, we protect that valuation, right? So it's not about a giant spreadsheet. It's about having those controls that hurt very, very, very well observed, and how you protect, for example, valuation, the trust, the operations, and and how you report that in terms of your compliance. The second thing is map the ownerships, right? Not only the processes. As the case of the fire alarm, we have the process, we have the compliance. It's a fire alarm over there, right? But who is responsible to test it and to stress test that, so that fire alarm, when we have a problem, is really working? And if it doesn't work, who is responsible for that? Yes, it sounds a bit accusative, but this is the kind of things actually, when the problems happened, the companies have no ownership, and the responsibility start to dilute, and at the end nobody's responsible for anything, and that cannot be the case. And the responsibility is also one thing that you want to observe, is not to finger point people, because as far as I understand, nobody wakes up in the morning looking to fail. So I don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, today I'm going to be a big fail. No, people wake up in the morning and say, I want to do good. They might be discouraged, they might be tired, but actually, as far as I understand, nobody wakes up in the morning looking to fail. I think that controls and ownership is a recognition of what people are doing good, and this is the purpose, really. It sounds accusatory many times, but actually it's not a carrot and a stick. It's to say, oh, you're responsible for this. You're doing a good job. Absolutely fantastic. You have this under control. And now we know who we need to call, right? When something is happening or before something happened, because you have this under control. You're doing an amazing job. So all this is, you should know how things are run and who is and how is evidence and what happens when it fails, right? And the third things I would like to mention is that make resilience practical. So in the assets lens today, you have the governance, risk, and compliance here, and underneath the systems, right? So the governance, risk, and compliance keeps the business honest, and the systems keep the business repeatable. And we talk about repeatability or predictability of the business because this is what increases your valuation, because you have an intellectual property there that makes your business what it is. And when those two works together, the boards, the executive teams, and the founders get fewer surprises and a better decision down the road. So here's, I think, the question that really matters today. How do you raise controls quickly with the quality that you're looking for without turning the company into a massive bureaucracy, right? So you don't want more paperwork. You don't want more complexity. You want things actually very linear and trackable processes that say, no, we understand what's going on, which is the measurement, the risk, the controls, and evidence, and the triage. And triage is, in an emergency case, who is going to be called first, in which order, what is responsible for what, etc., etc. So you have all the plan laid out in front of you. So wonderful. They say what to do next. That's what you gain working with me. So there's three things: business outcomes, differentiation, and risk reduction. In terms of business outcomes, I help boards to get control over what is material and very fast. That means clear control maps, sharper accountability, better board reporting, and fewer blind spots between risk, operations, and governance. In terms of differentiation, I do not treat controls as a pure compliance exercise. I use a rotating international advisory board so the business gets the mix it needs right now. For example, risk in terms of cyber, operation controls, audit committees, and but the depth or the that you need for this particular issue today. Remember that this model is an operating system. So you need depth today, but 6 months down the line, probably that depth is not needed anymore because all the things have been addressed. But the company now evolves into a different dynamic. So you need a different expertise that actually will satisfy that dynamic to the next stage. Then that mix changes as the milestones changes. And in terms of risk reductions, this lowers the chance of two bad outcomes at once. So weak controls and slow management. So the boards, the executive teams, and founders get the practical capability without bloating the payroll, and it gets challenge from people who have already done this under real pressure in other organizations or around the world. Right. One action you can take home today, and it's doable in 30 minutes or less. Pick your top 5 material risk and ask one blunt question for each one. Which controls will stop this? Who owns it? And what evidence would prove it worked last month? Right? So let's pause it here for today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow I will move from protection to edge, right? Your innovation, your transformation, the future. Because once the systems are steady, the boards, executive teams, and you as a founder has to decide how to reinvent the business without tearing up what already works. So have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.